Hi everybody, it's Dany, and today I'm going to do a quick little tutorial on making these great flowers out of the 5-Petal Flower Punch from Stampin' Up! You can make them as big or as small as you'd like, and you can even have little leaves poking out too. For the large flower on the card that I just showed you, I did 5 rows of flowers, which takes about 8 of the actual punched flowers. You're also going to want to cut a few leaves. Usually one punch will do it, so we'll cut one out of the old olive because we only really want 3 of the leaves anyway. For the rest, you're actually going to take the first 2 flowers and set them aside, and we'll get back to those in a minute. And the rest we're going to want to stack up as tightly as we can and hold them perfectly tight if we can, and we're going to snip them. And we're going to snip all the way down into the center from each petal. And this way we don't have to cut them all individually. They don't have to be perfectly even. They do have to be fairly close, but not perfect. And if you cut them on the diagonal like that, they're all nice and perfect. You'll notice that I'm actually using designer series paper for this flower that obviously has a second color on the back. I'm only going to be using the one color, but sometimes it looks really nice if you have a designer series paper that's green on the back, using that green as your leaves, or even curling them up a bit more so you see the back side of them. I'm going to sponge the edges of mine right now just to add a little bit of depth to the petals. And a trick that I wanted to show you also is if you don't have an ink pad in the color you want, but you do have markers, take your marker, scribble on your clear block, take your sponge and pick up your ink, and now you can sponge the edge of your petals with the ink that you didn't have the ink pad to. I also want to quickly finish sponging the edge of my card here. That you'll see the rest of this in a minute, but I wanted to show you that it works for, there's enough ink here that you can sponge the edge of your cards as darkly as you'd like to, as well as your petals. I find it's actually better for my petals to do it this way because you don't have you don't pick up as much ink as you would by dumping directly onto the your ink pad. So you get a lot lighter and finer if you want. You can pick up a lot more ink this way. You're also going to want to make sure that you do this to the edges of your not cut flowers. If you want to try and get right into the middle, you can actually do that. It gets a little bit fuzzier that way. You don't get quite the harsh line, and I actually prefer the fuzzier look. Alright, so now that's done, you have the option if you want also to curl your leaves. I like to curl them a little bit to give them some added depth. And especially on the 2 bigger ones, what I'll do is I'll take the foam part from my matte pack and my paper piercer, and I'll put the end of my paper piercer, the flat dull end, into the middle, and then I'll just kind of curl them like this. And it curls it the same way that a flower would, sort of, the petals would naturally curl up on their own in your house once they were cut anyway. For the outside ones, sometimes I'll just actually bend them a little bit and just kind of bend them around my thumb or my finger. They are a little bit harder to curl because if you do, you can curl them this way too, but because of the way you end up adding the glue to them, they don't stay nearly as nicely curled once you glue them. So I find that if you kind of wrap them around your finger a little bit, they get a little bit better of a curl, even if it's not quite as natural looking as these ones. Then when you go to adhere them, you're going to want to put adhesive just in the middle of the one main flower, and just in the middle, that way your petals can still stick up. And you're going to want to, I'm going to zoom in a little bit to sort of give you guys a better look at what I'm doing here. You're going to want to adhere them offset and try to get these ones as centered as you can on each other because the rest sort of depend all on this one. And then when you get that good, you're just going to squish them together a little bit. And then for the rest of them, you're going to want to put glue on the front side, actually, not the back side, and just on the very end here of it. Just put a little bit of snail on the end. And then you're going to want to center them in the middle of those flowers, in between each set of petals now here. And that way these ones, if you put it just on the end, the very end, these ones can still sort of curl up a bit from the back ones. They're not glued down. And a lot of times I'll flip these guys up quite a bit as well when I'm done making my flower. And now I'm going to quickly put the rest of it together for you. The further that you stick your petals in or out, the bigger your flower will be. That also depends on how many flowers you punch and cut up. But another way to determine how big your flower is if you only leave a little bit sticking out, or if you leave a whole lot sticking out. A lot of people like to do just what they consider a 3-row flower. That's this one here. I actually prefer to do 5 rows, and that's what I'll be doing for this card here, for this flower. If you do make a mistake and put them out a little too far, try to catch it before you put too many on, but you can actually pull them off without harming it at all. And you just stick it back in that little bit more, or pull it out that little bit more also. For the last row of my flowers, I actually like to curl them the opposite. I'd like to bend all of my leaves backwards a little bit. That helps it sort of stick up off of the page a bit. You can bend them all first if you want, or you can bend them as you're putting them on the flower. I like to bend them first because that way I remember to get them all bent instead of forgetting one or two. And that is your 8 5-petal punches together. That's how big of a flower it makes. Now I'm going to do my leaves, and with these ones it's actually a lot easier if you poke a hole right in the very center to know. This way they'll all be identical. If you cut directly to that center hole, your leaves will be nice and perfect. And that way, if a little bit more of it's sticking out, you know that it's going to be just fine. I tend to stick with groups of 3 or 5. I like odd numbers when I do my leaves. And these ones I also will curl up. And I like to curl my leaves a little bit more than I curl my petals, just because I find, at least where I live, the petals outside on my real flowers curl a lot. Maybe that's just because I'm a bad gardener. I'm not really sure. You're going to want to put it again on the inside. I'm so used to putting glue on the outside that I forget a lot of time, and sometimes they get it on both sides. And then you're just going to want to stick it and kind of have them stick out here and there. I usually like to do like a group of 2 over here, and then sometimes like a single flower or a single leaf over there as well. I'm going to add this to a card and show you guys that in just a second, but I also wanted to show you, this is what 8 of those punched flowers will do and how big it will go. These are just out of scrap paper, so don't mind the coloring. This is 6 and this is 4. You'll notice that this only has the 3 actual rows, even though it's made out of 4. And this is also what happens if you don't sponge them and you don't curl them. You do see the definition on them, but it's not nearly as defined as a flower like this. Now for something like this, you can put a brad in the middle. You can do a lot of things to it. Depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I'll even leave it empty. I'm actually going to be putting a button in that in just a minute. I also wanted to show you, this is my other little quick tip of the day. When you're doing brads, I love using my matte pack and my paper piercer to help. but I'm always afraid I'm going to break my nails. So when I put my brad through, I'll actually use my paper piercer down the back to split the brad open first so that I can just put the side of my finger in and I don't have to worry that I'm going to break my fingernail off. And I'm going to adhere this to my card front, and then I'm going to adhere my flower to my card front actually with a Stampin' Dimensional right in the back. That gives it a little bit of extra room. You can actually add a couple of them if you want, depending on how much you've played with your flower. It might be quite bulky, and if it is fairly bulky, you're going to want a couple just so that it has the room to stick up off of the page. In fact, this one, I think I might actually switch that out and make it two, just to give it a little bit more room to have the petals come down and the leaves come down. Alright, I'm going to set that with my 2 leaves over here and 1 leaf over there. And now that I'm looking at this, I think I actually need a little bit more dimension on my leaves. So I'm going to pull them off real quick and add some sponging to the edges. So I'm just going to grab some old olive ink and a sponge dauber and sponge the edges of my leaves. This way it'll give it a little bit more definition. It'll look fairly dark at first if you put on a lot, but the old olive ink dries pretty close to the same color as the old olive paper, so it won't actually be this dark. I'm actually going to go back and put a little bit more on the first one that I did, so that it stands out a little bit better too. Now make sure that you bend up your leaves a little bit while you're doing this, because your sponging will have taken some of the bending off of them. And then just put them right where you want them again. You can bend them around your finger also if you don't have a paper piercer or don't want to use it, but I find that it works best with the paper piercer. You get a little bit nicer of a curve to them. And then I'm just going to set this down where I want it and push on my Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm also going to use a button from our new button. This is actually a rich raspberry button that's going to go in the center, and I'm actually using the back side. I don't know if you can see it here very well. This is the front side to it, and I'm actually using the smooth back side. I think that it looks just a little bit cuter for this one. And I'm actually just going to use a glue dot to put mine on. You can use the Tombow multi-glue too, it just takes a little bit longer to dry. I hope you like it. I'll put a still of this on after we're done as well, so you can see all of the little bit up close. If you have any questions, just go visit my blog, incrediblecreations.blogspot.com. You can always send me an email if you have any questions, and I will do my best to help you out. Thanks for stopping in, and I'll see you later. Bye!